Hey everyone, Scott Radigan here. It's Friday. It is 1:43 and we're live. So, excuse me for being a couple minutes late. I'm trying to figure out Facebook changes its interface. It feels like every week. So, I was trying to figure out how to best set up the live. So, thanks for bearing with me on that. Um, I got 3 or 4 questions just today on the same topic, and this is my number one question of 2021 and the last part of 2020. And that is, what is the scope of a health coach, and when, it's a lot of health coaching questions, but what's the health coach's scope? And a lot of doctors, chiropractors, NPs, everybody else is frustrated by their licensure, and they want to be able to freely move around the country and practice medicine. And so a lot of them will say, and you'll probably hear a lot of people on social media who are not attorneys say, yeah, it's fine, just call yourself a health coach or call yourself a consultant. Then you can do whatever you want. I will start by saying I am frustrated too that more states don't allow, licensure to be reciprocal. That is, if you had a license in Texas, why shouldn't you be able to see people in Oklahoma? I mean, people study at medical schools all around the country, then they go to residencies in a second location, and then they move to a third location. So it's not like there's a whole lot of different training standards or that medicine is wildly different from one state to another. It's just kind of a thing that we have to deal with based on how our country was set up and the fact that we have 50 different micro states, micro nation states within our larger union, right? So I share your frustration that this is the way it is, but this is the way it is. And so my job is to tell you what the laws say and what they are, as they are, not as we would wish them to be. And, last week we saw West Virginia come out and say that they're going to start allowing people to register just to practice telemedicine in West Virginia. And I think that's a great thing. They're now one of the most permissive states in the country once they get their rules in place. They still have to figure out the details. But Florida is another one that allows you to register in Florida so long as you have a license in good standing in any other state. So it's coming, but for right now, here's how I answer that question. It doesn't matter what you call it; it matters what you do. So I went to a school with a Latin motto that said "Acta non verba," and that means deeds, not words. So, in the eyes of the medical board of the state in which you're seeing patients, it doesn't really matter what you call it, as long as if you're a doctor and you call yourself a doctor in your marketing materials and you see somebody and you order a test or you interpret something or you practice medicine, that's practicing medicine without a license in that state. Even though you've got a license somewhere else, you don't have a license in that state, and that is a crime, and you have civil liability as well. So the follow-up question I get is, well, how is Dr. So-and-so doing it? They're just calling themselves a consultant and then going around the country and practicing as if they're still a doctor. And my answer is, I don't know, and maybe you should ask them, but it's not legal if they don't have a license in the state where the patient is located. It's just the fact of the matter. Now, that's enough right there. That's super valuable information. I say it over and over again for people that pay me for my time, and that's something that we just all have to deal with. Now, I don't like being the person that says no. So what can you do? Well, one is look around your state. For 45 of the states, you have more than 1 million people in your state. For many of our states, there are over 20 million people in your state. If you can't fill up your functional medicine practice with 200 people out of several million, then maybe you should examine kind of maybe what your marketing looks like or what your patient retention looks like. And I don't mean to place blame on you, but there's enough patients to go around, is my point, so that you don't have to put your license at risk, your career at risk by committing a crime in another state. Because in every state, that is a criminal activity. Then people say, well, how likely am I to get caught? Um, that's a good question. We don't know. Often there's not a lot of task forces out there kind of doing undercover work on this, but usually it's a complaint from a patient. So there's no way to know. And then when a patient complains, then they get involved and maybe they'll do a secret shopper or an undercover patient kind of a deal. The point is, why risk it? You can either get a full license in that state if lots of your patients come from that state, or a good healthy percentage of your patients come from there. You can apply for a telemedicine license if that state, that particular state offers it. Or you can refocus your efforts locally within your own state or other states of licensure that you currently hold, and refocus, redouble your efforts to see patients in your home state. Another option that I like to suggest, I know you have a ton of work on your plate already, but another option is offering some sort of an educational product. All the rage these days is courses. So you could offer I'm just throwing out names, a 14-day Reset Your Gut course. You could do a 30-day detox course. You could do a elimination diet course. You could do anything that's informational and educational only. But here's the caveat. A lot of people want to do that and then also see people one-on-one as well. To me, is a slippery slope. It could be done if you're very careful in your language and you're just answering clarifying questions about the program itself. But if you're going to be seeing one-on-one people in the course of this course, there is a not zero risk. I mean, it's pretty decent risk that you will default into your medical thinking and make medical recommendations based on how they present to you, and that could be medicine. Am I making too big of a deal of this? Maybe, but it's not my license. I'm trying to protect you guys in this, and I wouldn't let my wife do that, so I wouldn't recommend it for you. But you can do courses where they're pre-recorded videos and people just absorb the information. You might give them resources where they can go get their own tests if they're interested in objective data, or just guide them through as if it were a book that has kind of come to life in video form, where it's one directional flow of information. So they're absorbing the information, they're not getting a back and forth interactive experience where, you know, they present this thing and then you make a recommendation, and then that could be interpreted by a medical board as the practice of medicine. Again, without a license in that state, it's a crime, usually a misdemeanor, but misdemeanor is not always prosecuted. It's usually at the point where somebody gets injured or harmed, and then it becomes felony, different levels of felony, depending on how much harm was done to that patient. So, am I making too big of a deal of it? Maybe, but my job is to tell you what the laws are and to, you know, steer you away from high-risk activities. If you, in your risk tolerance, determine, yeah, I'm just going to call myself a consultant all around the country, still practice the way I practice, that's up to you. Hopefully you will have heard my recommendation not to do that, but at least you have all the knowledge and you're walking into it with full knowledge of the risk. Others of you that are not as risk tolerant may decide to kind of heed my recommendations for alternatives to practicing without a license. We love that you're out there helping people change lives. That's why I exist. I wouldn't have left a better, more secure law firm job if I didn't really believe in this and helping you guys. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me with any questions you may have. This is a really tricky area. Health coaches aren't recognized by any states right now, so that's kind of why people are slipping in. But that's probably not going to last forever. So be careful out there. If you're a licensed provider, I don't recommend stripping yourself of your license and calling yourself a health coach, like retiring your license. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't just call yourself a health coach in another state unless, you know, you were very careful and you could really limit what you do to health coach activities, which most people tend to agree that it's really tough to do, or they can't do it at all. and just kind of think of redoubling your efforts locally, creating an online educational thing or a book that people could purchase and consume whenever they want and wherever they want around the world. That's another option as well. Or check out telemedicine specific licenses in a handful of states. More are coming. More states join the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact every year. I think there's 3 states this year that are considering the legislation. So we'll keep you abreast of all of that. But I think it's high risk, low reward to call yourself a health coach. But that's just one man's opinion. So be safe out there and have a great weekend.